How able is the army to cope with people in that sort of condition?
Well, for me, it was relatively unable. I asked 3 doctors for help and got pretty much nowhere.
You are very critical.
I am very critical of my own experience. The 3rd doctor said, in effect, sit it out for 9 months. The MOD is getting better. It is getting better, but I'm not convinced we're doing all we can, and certainly more needs to be done. But my own experience, I was let down.
Is that because so many soldiers come back from tours of duty in places like Iraq and Afghanistan suffering from post-traumatic stress? If the army treated them all, took them out of the front line, there wouldn't be an army left?
I don't think it's that. I think it's that the army says that 4% of people coming back from Afghanistan would suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. But that's based on a questionnaire that soldiers fill in. And I don't think that's the best way of identifying the scale of the problem. But also, for veterans like me, the treatment's there and it works, and I've benefited from that treatment. But we need to do much more to publicise it.
There are people now doing your job in Afghanistan, and they're getting less training than you had. Are we shaping up for a serious problem?
Well, the people who've just completed the first set of this smaller training won't deploy to Afghanistan for perhaps a year or so, but that's certainly the intent. And my concern is with those people that they won't have every advantage that I had in Iraq, and I needed every minute of that training to survive.
4 quick questions, Kevin, that we ask all our authors. First question, how and where do you write?
I wrote Red One in a room, my spare room, on my own, listening to music that I listened to in Iraq to really put me back in that frame of mind.
And what would be one book that you recommend to a friend?
I loved Touching the Void, a tale of heroism, of the same kind of helplessness as Red One, but also quite an inspiring story as well.
That was the tale of Joe Simpson, the
Yes.
mountaineer, finding his way down from a mountain in the Andes against all odds.
Absolutely, and I really loved it. It's a short book, but for me it really distilled so many emotions.
And finally, you've written this book, gripping read it is, you're going to write another.
I'd love to. I'd love to write another book about the effects of war on people. Not about me, but about the effects of war on injured people, people with mental illnesses, but also on the family of people who get injured and perhaps killed as well.
Kevin Iverson, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Hello and good evening. Australians are awaiting the outcome of their most closely fought election in decades, with results so far pointing to a hung parliament. With nearly 3/4 of the votes counted, the governing Labour Party and the opposition Liberal National Coalition are running neck and neck. From Sydney, our correspondent Nick Bryant reports.
It's been a national soap opera where the voters thought they'd get to write the final instalment. But as each vote was counted, it seemed there were arguments over the plot. The Labour government started the evening by edging ahead. Then the opposition hit back by winning target seat after target seat. Then the central character in this whole drama, the Prime Minister Julia Gillard, stepped before her supporters, having fallen short of an outright victory.
Bill Clinton once famously said in a previous election in America, "The people have spoken, but it's going to take a little while to determine exactly what they've said." And that is where we find ourselves tonight.
Having ruthlessly ousted her predecessor, Kevin Rudd, on the eve of this election, she's been punished by the electorate. But the backlash wasn't vicious enough to hand her Conservative opponent a clear-cut victory.
Just 6 months ago, Tony Abbott was seen as something of a joke figure in
Australian politics. Nobody gave him a chance in this election, but he's done well enough to produce the first Hung Parliament, it seems, since the Second World War.
What is clear from tonight is that the Labor Party has definitely lost its majority. And what that means is that the government has lost its legitimacy.
This has been a scrappy campaign at the end of a brutal phase in Australian politics. Perhaps the voters ultimately decided that nobody truly deserved to win. Nick Bryant, BBC News, Sydney.
Engineers have started loading fuel into Iran's first nuclear power plant. Tehran says it's a milestone in its drive to produce its own nuclear energy, and it comes as part of an international agreement to help Iran with its civil nuclear